Good morning on this Sunday, August 18th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. State elections officials are testing Georgia's voting system. Also, chaos erupts at College Park City Hall over a censure of the mayor. And a water fight is brewing at Georgia's new Hyundai plant in Bullitt County. Kathy, Phil, and Martha are here. Alicia's Thomas Searcy is filling in for Theron. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
State and county elections officials are working to assure Georgia residents the state's voting system is secure ahead of the 2024 presidential election.
It's not just the country anymore watching us, it is the world. And we should be doing everything 110% to show them that we've got this going on here. We know what we're doing.
Tuesday's check of Paulding County's elections office, officials ran tests of the state and county elections systems, ensuring every vote cast on election day will be accurately recorded.
We have election integrity in Georgia, and what you see in Paulding County, what you see in Heard County, where I was earlier this morning, and we're traveling throughout the state, you're seeing election directors and their teams and their poll workers working hard to make sure we can ensure a safe, secure, accurate election for everyone.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's visit to the elections office in Dallas comes just weeks after Trump criticized him during a campaign rally in Atlanta earlier this month. Trump blamed Raffensperger and Governor Brian Kemp for his loss in 2020, claiming that he had defeated President Biden in Georgia. Officials say allowing the public to observe the elections process helps counter efforts to undermine the public's confidence in the electoral process.
We did everything we were supposed to do in 2020. The results did not waver, and I think that people have a hard time accepting that. But you know, we can't do anything about 2020. That's the past. All we can do is move forward.
All right, let's get right to it. Phil, to you first this week. Do you think that these visits will help to silence the critics of Georgia's voting system?
Well, sadly, no. I think people in both parties and everybody who watches elections and wants election security and integrity are going to be concerned, and they should be. They ought to be watchdogs. And so I think that when Secretary of State Raffensperger says they're secure, we need to trust but verify. And he did these visits. Yeah, they're testing for accuracy, but regular viewers have heard me say this, and that is that I'm worried about, even if it's 2 counties in Georgia out of 159, if there's cyber attacks and something goes down, we've got a problem. Now, the good news is, and a lot of people don't know this, we do have a paper ballot backup in all 159 counties. Now, that's the controversy. Maybe we should have temporary paper ballots more so, but I think, time will tell.
Well, Kathy, as former chairwoman of the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registrations, your thoughts on all of this?
Well, let me be really clear. These machines are not hooked up to any sort of outside device or connection to the internet or anything like that, so there won't be a cyber attack.
You could get into the software, though.
Well, you'd have to be in front of the machine to get into the software.
Yeah, right.
So I think, what we have to think about is the security in the warehouses,
the
certainly
registration process?
The registration process?
Mm-hmm.
The registration process is fine. I'm not.
Okay, a lot of folks have questions about the registration process.
The voter registration process? Well, that's a whole other topic, but I can assure you that the registration process is fine. Now, this new online system that Raffensperger has put into place to take people's names off, I've got some concerns about, because I think it's far too easy for people to have that personally identifiable information and remove people's information. I think Raffensperger sort of, he's about half in, half out. He just recently came out against some of the new rules that the SEB proposed, and I think that was a good thing. I think it's good for him to be out and be visible looking at things, but believe me, all of the election directors across the state are, doing the logic and accuracy testing, locking down their machines. Fulton County's got, cameras everywhere to be able to track and see if anybody approaches something that shouldn't be. So I think the machines are safe until somebody comes up with something better. I think that's what we have.
Martha, right now the polls are really showing a very tight race. If it's that close, do you worry that the losing side will just not accept the results, and this will be, we'll be dragging this out for weeks and months?
I mean, I think that's certainly a worry, but I'm not there yet. I mean, the last 6 weeks have been like 10 years of political news. So
yes.
if you're asking me to predict what's going to happen in the next 8 or 10 weeks, I'm not going to try to do that. But I'm always concerned about election integrity, but they do these kinds of checks every election cycle. We've had 3 or 4 election cycles since 2020 that have had very little to no problems, no waits in line, none of the problems that come along with this. I think we have to, Phil, I think trust but verify, sure, but what we have to do is accept the results if everything's in place. And the problem in 2020 was not with the voting machines. The voting machines, Donald Trump was ahead about 3.5 million votes when we all went to bed. I think we fixed a lot of those problems, and I think we need to look forward rather than back.
But in Fulton County, we had that pause, which was illegal. That's what
right.
bothered
That's
people.
True. I agree.
And it fostered all sorts of...
But we've had 3 elections since then where nothing like that has happened, so we've got to keep moving forward.
Alicia.
My concern here is the bigger picture. I think there's first this Republican infighting where the MAGA Republicans are sowing doubt. I think Trump and his co-conspirators started this in 2020 with 4 or 5 states. Now it's spread across the country where they're sowing doubt, they're questioning processes, they're training thousands of people to question the eligibility of voters. I think this is all a concerted effort because I think Trump is trying to do everything that he can to make us question this process, perhaps throw it to his very corrupt majority-led Supreme Court that will eventually try to, decide this election. And what bothers me the most is that the public servants involved in this work, who work day and night to make sure that these machines are safe, that our elections are fair, that they're being demonized, that their integrity is being questioned. And so I'm concerned about what this is really about. And I think at the end of the day, Donald Dump, as I am now calling him, is afraid that he is losing this election slowly but surely, and his chance of being a dictator is going away, and he's trying to keep himself out of jail for all the crimes he's committed.
All right,
Look,
let's just try to keep it professional. Let's just say former President Trump, too.
Yeah, bottom line is, Republicans are doing nothing any differently than what Democrats have done for generations. Democrats have challenged elections. They've had lawyer pools. In fact, usually what happens is Democrats do these kinds of things and challenge elections, and Republicans come later to it. I just don't buy.
Nothing like this, though. Absolutely nothing like
Well,
this.
that's easy for you to say, okay? But the bottom line is we need to have oversight in every election that we have. Certainly no problem with that.
No one's
but
disagreeing
Democrats
with
have,
that.
Look, the person who was your governor's candidate the last 2 elections has had a lot of problems with admitting that she lost. The first denier was Hillary Clinton.
What we're talking about.
Okay, we've got a lot of issues here, and Democrats were the first ones to do these kinds of challenges.
Kathy.
Yeah, I don't think that's right.
all.
I think that we can go to individual candidates and say, did they concede the right way or did they not concede the right way? That is really different than stacking the state election board, sending in rule changes, collaborating with people on different boards. I mean, I don't use the word conspiracy lightly, but what's going on with the state election board, and certainly Republican members of Fulton County and even a Fulton County commissioner talking amongst themselves and making these rule changes right before we go into an election is really the scariest thing I've ever seen.
Democrats
and
have dominated that board for years.
Dominating the board has nothing to do with it.
go.
Nominating the board has nothing to do with it. What has something to do with it is who's giving the direction to the people who are on this board. I've been on the Fulton County board, chair of the Fulton County Board of Commissions. Democrats don't call me and tell me what to do. It doesn't happen.
All right.
But my colleagues are getting messages as we're doing action. I sit there and see them doing it. It's really inappropriate.
Phil.
Just very quickly, the State Elections Board, the SEB, and Secretary of State Raffensperger doesn't like this because he's lost power. The legislature kicked him off that board because we needed more election integrity, because both parties have been rightly questioning. I think everybody has a right to question. So I think that's why the State Elections Board is getting all this heat, because they're new at it and they are the final rulemaking body for elections.
Okay, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, chaos erupts at a College Park City Council meeting, and now Georgia's Attorney General is demanding answers after police cleared the room.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The Georgia Attorney General's office is demanding answers from College Park officials after the gallery was cleared by police during a specially called meeting last Friday. 2 people were led away in handcuffs as the interim city manager told police to eject the residents from the room. The meeting was held to censure Mayor Bianca Motley Broom for what the city council says was ongoing disruptive behavior. Alicia, what a mess.
It is a mess, and I think the media coverage hasn't quite caught what's happening here. I think this is a personality struggle and a power struggle. In many of our cities, there are some charters that have strong mayors, some that have weak mayors. This is a city that has a charter with a weak mayor. And I think this particular mayor doesn't like that language in the charter. And I think her conduct is frankly not becoming of what we would want for mayors in our state. I wonder if people are aware that she's actually the vice chair of the Georgia Municipal Association, which means that next year she's going to be the chair. And how she conducts herself is important. And you know, having to censure her is embarrassing. You know, this is a important city in our state, right? It's where the airport is. A number of amenities there. And so what I think needs to happen is they need a mediator, whether it's their peers on the city council and other places, or mayors, or city attorneys, because their city attorney is also involved, to sit down and iron out how we can figure this out. Yes, a mayor deserves to have a voice, but in this case, the mayor is the chair, right? She's supposed to conduct the meetings, not have time on the agenda to speak and opine on the issues, or even do any policy making. And so I think there's a way they can work this out.
Martha, any insight?
You know, I think it's so funny because we do spend so much time on national politics, and even on the state politics, we do the big races, right? But really where the controversy always is when you have, you know, city councils and county commissions. And look, I think your assessment was great. I mean, that's exactly what it looks like to me. We in Gainesville have the same kind of situation where the mayor's kind of a weak mayor as opposed to a strong mayor, but he has more of a say-so. So it'll be interesting to watch. It sure was fun to watch, I will say.
All right, well, according to the AJC, big changes are coming to the process for Georgians to sign up for the Affordable Care Act. When open enrollment begins November 1st, residents of Georgia will no longer be able to sign up on the federally operated website, healthcare.gov, and referred instead to a state-based website, georgiaaccess.gov, called Georgia Access. Phil, this is a really big change.
It is. In fact, Insurance Commissioner John King calls it historic, and I think he's correct. Obamacare was a federal, one-size-fits-all expensive and tyrannical system, and so now that it goes back to the state, I think it's a lot better in terms of people trying to get the affordable insurance.
Kathy, do you feel the state could do a better job?
Well, I don't see that there's a reason to change horses at all. The system operates really, really well. People know it. They know where to go to find it and to find the policies that they need. And as we've seen, the governor's Medicaid sign-up program has been an absolute failure. There's no precedent for this system at all. So we won't know until it's too late whether it's actually working. But remember, the other system wasn't broken.
Martha?
Well, I would disagree with that. And as a person that had to actually use healthcare.gov for a period of time because I was in between positions and having to be self-employed and get insurance myself, it was very, very difficult to navigate. And then once you did navigate it and make the choices, the follow-up was poor, and there were so many text messages and emails that were confusing and didn't get things together. So if that has been fixed, and also this is going to allow some programs that are more Georgia-based to be used, and then it will feed you out to healthcare.gov, if that's maybe not to the website, but to the programs, if they don't have something here in Georgia. So my experience was not good with healthcare.gov, and I'm a person that can navigate those kind of systems.
All right. Well, a long-awaited pay raise is coming to the caregivers who help people with disabilities across Georgia. DBHDD Commissioner Kevin Tanner called this also historic. Alicia, I work with DBHDD, and this truly is a game changer. I mean, some of these folks have been getting paid $10 an hour for this demanding work.
Yeah, I think people who take care of the elderly, people with disabilities, like, they are God's angels on earth.
And it's a true calling.
It is a calling, and it has to be if you're making $10 an hour. And frankly, going up to $16 an hour isn't that much, right? And so I think it's a good start. What I appreciate is that the state is leveraging some of those leftover COVID funds, good move, and then we're partnering with the federal government, the Biden administration, right, to help fund these positions. And so I'm grateful for this move. This is the right thing to do, again, for people who are doing God's work.
And Phil, this was a big push also by Governor Kemp.
Well, that's right, and I think I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a good thing, and of course, as you know, Commissioner Kevin Tanner is one of the good agency heads, so it should be a good thing.
All right, good. Coming up, a group of folks in Bullitt County are worried about how the new Hyundai electric vehicle plant will impact their water supply.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Some folks in Bullock County are calling for a referendum. They're concerned about the new, huge Hyundai plant sucking up their water supply. Kathy, do you think they'll have a case here for a referendum?
Oh, I think they do have a case, because this is really something to watch, and it's a big concern. When you start sucking all the water out of an aquifer, at a certain point, you don't get to replenish that aquifer. In Bryan County, the neighboring county, they're not allowed to touch the aquifer because of the danger of that. So they've just moved across the county line and are trying to do the same thing in the same aquifer in Bullock County. So I hope that the folks down there are successful and can stop this, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Martha, we see this with big development coming in.
Big development, and then of course, you know, electric vehicles take a lot more water than I think people realize. The unintended consequences of these kinds of decisions when government starts kind of pushing towards a certain kind of industry, that kind of thing. So I'm always glad to see development all over, but and it has been a movement of Governor Kemp's administration to try to bring development all over the state. But there's also these unintended consequences. So I do think there's a case there. It'll be heard, and we'll see what happens.
Alicia?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one to watch. I love to see when people in their community get involved. When I read about this, and I read the number 6.6 million gallons of water are going to be extracted daily, that's a scary figure to think about natural resources like water. I also think it was telling that during this past election, 3 of the sitting commissioners they lost their seats, and it's probably because of this issue. And so, like Kathy, I hope that the people are successful. I also think, as a business person, right, you want business to have the resources they need. They're talking about 8,000 jobs here, and so I'm hopeful that there's a good solution found for this.
Phil?
Well, I'd like to hear, you've made some good points, and if I lived there, I'd be concerned too. I want to hear what the state has to say. Maybe there should be a referendum and have a debate on this, and let's see, let the chips fall where they may.
All right, moving on. The Galloway School in Buckhead's Chastain Park neighborhood went ahead with the demolition of the campus's historic Gresham building, and that's not sitting well with historians and several folks who live in the area. I mean, I don't live far. I know, Phil, you don't live far. I was shocked to see it gone.
Well, I drove by the other day and was shocked too, and then I read about it. Yes, it's a historic building, but it's not on the historic register. That was the first problem. And secondly, you know, if you're going to have a plan B, if you're going to tear down a building, and make it a viable plan B. Now that plan B is held up in court, they want to have a new building for the school, which I get, but it's in limbo.
Kathy?
Well, what I read said it was on the National Historic Register, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay,
I think, you know, this
check.
is just classic Atlanta, right? We just tear stuff down and then put something else up, and you know, that kind of the lack of creativity and innovation and sense of history here is really of concern. There are plenty of architects here and around the world that could probably come up with a great adaptation to that building, and I think they jumped the gun. They were waiting on all kinds of zoning hearings and stuff, and they tore it down before the answer was in.
You know, and it's a communication thing too, because if, you know, there's a lot of buildings that have to be torn down because either they have asbestos or whatever, and the remediation is going to cost more than it would cost to renovate.
This was dangerous, like a fire hazard. And
yeah, I mean, but they didn't communicate that very well. I think if you make the case on something like that, unfortunately, I'm with you. I don't like to tear down older buildings, but there comes a time too where it's cost more to fix it than it does to actually rebuild something else, and that's what you're seeing in a lot of cases. I think they did a poor job of communication, and they just tore it down one day.
Alicia?
Yeah, I agree. I think this was about the way in which it was done. We certainly understand the preservation of historic buildings, and this one certainly has quite a history. But it wasn't done the right way. I will say, as an educator, when you tell me that this is a building that's jeopardizing the safety of kids and it needed to be torn down, I'm going to go with what's best for kids.
All right. I want to move on because, Phil, you wanted to talk about Cobb County and the elections process. The maps were thrown out. It's still a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion. Where are we in this process?
Well, there was a court case just the other day which finally decided that, yes, the state legislature can draw maps for the county commission districts in Cobb County. The Democrat-controlled county commission said, no, we wanted to use our map. Well, they did. The May 21st primaries were done using that map, not to get too complicated here. But the taxpayers are now going to be on the hook, sadly, in Cobb County because they have to pay for a redo. And it really screws up what the county commission has done. I bet you there'll be lawsuits saying that, wait a minute, these commissioners can't vote because these elections were null and void.
Alicia, you live in Cobb, so I know you've been following this.
I do, and I have to add just a couple of pieces in here that are missing. Number one, the delegation, the local delegation of the legislature is really who draws the maps. And because Democrats control the Cobb delegation, the entire legislature got involved in this process, which should not have been the case. So that's the first thing.
Well, the court ruled that they could do that, the whole legislature.
They could, but in terms of practice, I was there for 12 years, went through 3 different redistricting processes. You honor what the local delegation wants to do. The Republicans in the legislature completely ignored that. What we also need to remember is that these maps, as soon as they were passed, essentially made a sitting member of the Cobb County Commission ineligible to sit in her own seat. I don't know if that's ever happened.
But she had moved.
She did not move.
That
is, I promise you, she still lived in the same house she did then.
I guess that was the controversy.
They wanted her out of her seat, and they drew maps to do that immediately. It didn't wait until the next election. She was drawn out of her seat immediately. That's a problem. Now, was the legal maneuver that the commission used the right one? Maybe or maybe not. But at the end of the day, we have to respect the rules that are in place. You know, Republicans have to honor the fact that Cobb County is Democrat now. And so just as we had to live through the Republican control, now they've got to live through Democrats. This was not the right way to do things. They were mishandling the law. This is not how you treat elected officials. And so now people who have run for this seat, won an election, all that gets thrown out again. Now there's a new election. To your point, Phil, we're wasting tax dollars. And this all could have been avoided if the Republicans in the Georgia General Assembly had respected a time-honored practice of doing exactly what the Cobb delegation asked them to do.
Not all the delegations are respected over the years, though. It's worked both ways.
It is true, but right is right.
I mean, he's right. It has worked both ways in the past, just depending on how things are play out. But I'm surprised that it has come to this, and I'm sure there will be some more lawsuits.
Kathy?
I feel so sorry for the candidates who ran their primaries and expected to have a certain outcome, and now they got to do it over again. I mean, that, as a former candidate myself, that's just exhausting.
I feel bad for the voters who are like, when do we vote?
Yeah,
where do we vote? Where are the maps?
Like the PSC.
Right. All right, coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Well, if you've been under a political rock, then you might have missed this book, Veto, The Governor's Cap by former Governor Nathan Deal. Martha, you brought it as well. I got my copy. I bought mine from Amazon, so it's ready. You can order yours. But I love the fact that it introduces children in a kind of a soft way about death.
Yeah, and it came about, it was such a great story. It came about because he had promised Sandra he would buy write a children's book, and he hadn't got around to it. And so he wanted to take the time.
And it's dedicated to her, too.
And it's dedicated to Sandra Deal. And they'll be dedicating the Sandra Deal Elementary School on August 26th. And then across the street from the school, he'll be having a book signing at 6 o'clock.
All right, that's great. Any
Yes,
and
absolutely.
losers?
So losers this week are people I'm going to call terrorists that keep going after the police training center. The things that happened there this week were awful, and they are big losers. And Nathan Deal is also involved in the Democracy Defense Project, which is a bipartisan group of people across the country talking about democracy. So he's a winner for that. And then my husband had to sign up for Social Security benefits, and he took a look at how much money he had put in over the years. And now he's very sad, so he'll be getting it soon. We'll see.
All right. Alicia.
I'm going to join this team and make Nathan Deal my winner as well. I served with him when he was governor of this state, and I think he is going to be one of the best governors that we've had, particularly in terms of education and criminal justice. And so when Sandra Deal was here, she came to read to one of our schools when I was superintendent. So they both have a very special place in my heart. So I tried to get the book. And so I want to thank Roxanne from Barnes & Noble for helping me. I've ordered it, it's coming, and I'm excited about that. Secondly, I want to make all of the Democrats who are descending upon Chicago in the next couple of days my winner. I'm excited about our convention, excited about the history that will be made starting next week and all the way through January 15th.
Well, we'll have lots to talk about next week.
Yes,
Phil.
we will.
Well, obviously Nathan Deal is my winner, Republican Nathan Deal.
Yes, that's okay.
Also, my winner too is UGA President Jerry Moorhead and the Chancellor of the University System of Georgia, Sonny Perdue. For all 26 colleges and universities, a message was sent just the other day, and that is they're not going to tolerate these radicals disrupting learning, trying to occupy with tent cities on private property, etc. And so 6 students were actually suspended. They can't go on campus because they didn't follow the conduct, and the presidents of these universities are bracing for these demonstrations and often out of control protests. So I think that's a good sign.
All right, Kathy.
I'm just bracing for the Georgia-Clemson game in a couple of weeks. My winner is Mary Charles Howard. She's spearheading the development of the Georgia High-Low Trail, which is a 200-mile cycling path from Athens to Savannah. Having been through that with the Beltline, I can say, go girl, get it done, because it'll bring a lot of economic development and a lot of fun for people around Georgia. My loser is Chris Carr. He's investigating the College Park City Council for their violation of the Open Rules Act. Mostly Democrats, an entirely black city council, but not investigating the Republicans on the state election board who did a similar thing, disregarded his explicit notice, and yet he's not investigating them.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Thank you, and make it a great week. We'll see you next time.